Welcome everyone to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 164. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, Nick Cordy, at @NetworkNerd_ on Twitter, filling in for my normal co-host, John White, at VJourneyman. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey to career enlightenment. So let's take a trip. All right, this is the conclusion of our series of interviews with Louise Bunyan. Let's recap for you real quick. In episode 162, which was part 1, we talked about what it's like to be in talent marketing, which is Louise's current role. What is the function of that within an organization, and what's its role in the hiring process? We also talked about Louise's early career as an events assistant, how she relocated to another country, and how she took feedback and decided to fill a skills gap. In part 2, episode 163, Louise shared with us an interesting way to gain experience through bartering and treating it like a regular job, putting it on your resume, and gaining that relatable experience when it's hard to get it. She also gave a deep dive on search engine optimization and talked about how that specific skill set was part of what led to the birth of SmartFox, which is her business. This week, we're going to go into a little bit more details on the birth of SmartFox and the circumstances surrounding that. What would you do if you were told today that you had a very short amount of time to pack up your desk and be on your way? Well, Louise is going to tell us the story of exactly how that happened to her. And she's going to share what is it like to go 5 months without a job. But she's also going to share the passion she developed for candidates, all the interviews she went on, and the feedback she was getting. You'll hear about her move to talent marketing and why that made sense. And she's going to give us some insight into why someone would start their own business and move back to working for an employer. So let's get to it. Here we go with part 3 and the conclusion of our series of interviews with Louise Bunyan. Mentioned this a couple of times, Louise, and I think we should dive deeper, and that's this idea of being made redundant, because I want you to tell the story of what happened when you were made redundant, if you don't mind.
So I left the recruitment agency to move to this really cool scaling tech startup in Cork. It was like a slice of Silicon Valley in Cork, and I became a full-time content writer. And I joined quite a new team. There was one person there ahead of me, and then 2 of us were hired to join this one person. Look, I won't go into details on it, but, just instinctively, I just kind of knew. I was like, what am I after doing? Like, this place is not for me. So it was a bit helter-skelter. They were scaling massively. Like, I think they'd gone from 40 people to 70 people and I was only there kind of a couple of months. It was crazy. So we were doing the best with our blog, and we won an award, actually. We won Best Marketing Communications Blog in Ireland in September 2016. And then I'll never forget it. I just, do you ever get a gut feeling? I knew something was up. I knew something was coming. We got a new director from New York who was making sweeping changes. I was very kind of, I was like, I don't know if I'll be okay here now, And so anyway, I remember coming in that morning. So it was in October, it was Tuesday morning in October. And 1 or 2 people wouldn't look me in the eye. They wouldn't meet me in the eye. So they were actually quite senior at the time. So I think they knew, I know that they knew what was coming. So anyway, at about 3 p.m, we got a message from the CEO on chat to come to this room. And I was just like, oh, this is either really, really good or this is really, really bad. So we walked into this room and there was him and the head of HR. And basically we were told that they were outsourcing the blog to an agency in New York. And we were being made redundant there and then. And we had like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to say goodbye and to pack up our desk and go. So a part of me actually was relieved. I was like, I have a get out of jail card here. I can go into interviews. We're not allowed to swear on this podcast. I can say like I didn't mess up. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't fired. Legitimately, our jobs are outsourced to a content marketing agency in New York. And in hindsight, that would be very naive. So packed up the desk. Me and my colleague Tom were in absolute shock. Went home that evening. My CV was almost brand new because it was only 8 months old. So we made redundant after 8 months. I put in the awards that we won. I was like, I'll be grand. I'll be fine. And then I started interviewing. And that was like a massive learning process. Very grueling. Ground me down, burnt me out. I interviewed full-time for 5 months. Relentless rejection. And basically, interestingly, what happened was job titles weren't accurate. People were looking for digital marketing manager. You go along for the interview and Facebook kept coming up in interviews again and again. Have you run Facebook ads? What's your Facebook campaign experience like? You've no experience running Facebook ads. So I scratched my head kind of going, why are you calling it a digital marketing manager job when you're actually looking for a Facebook expert? So after a while, I started writing down everything I could remember when I came out of an interview into a spreadsheet. And after about 2 months, I read back over it and I was like, why is Facebook cropping up again and again and again? So look, I'm not going to change companies putting the wrong job titles on job specs. I can't change that. But what I could change was my skill set and closing that gap. So that's when I started freelancing. And I worked with a couple of clients. I ran Facebook ads because that was the problem. When I had been in my 2 previous roles, somebody else always did Facebook ads, either an agency or a consultant. And I just didn't have that hands-on experience. Actually, what we'd mentioned at the very start, like for interns and new grads trying to get a job, I had 5, 6 years, 7 years experience. I had an award, but I didn't have this thing that companies wanted. So I had to go back and I had to upskill, and I did an advanced Facebook advertising course. I ran a couple of campaigns, and literally that's all it was. That's all I needed then for clients to start kind of working with me. But at that stage, I had kind of carved out this path then in LinkedIn training. And I really kind of took that on. And then I got mentoring from one of Ireland's leading e-commerce mentors about 3 years ago. And she just said, you have to call yourself Ireland's leading expert in LinkedIn training. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And she was like, you are? And she was like, own that space. And I did. I put it on my LinkedIn headline.
And if memory serves, this owning a business was actually critical to you getting the job you have now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, because of that awful candidate experience that I had, I'm very passionate about the candidate experience and I'll fight for the candidate. I wrote a couple of blogs. I let rip in one blog about all the terrible experiences that I had as an interviewee. I started writing about talent personas. I started becoming very passionate about employer branding. And then I suppose through the LinkedIn, I started kind of working with 1 or 2 companies on their employer branding. And then when I saw the job for VMware and I read through the job spec and I was like, this is me. The first time ever in my life, I read through the job spec and I was like, trainer, copywriter, a words person, somebody who's passionate about employer branding, the candidate experience based in Ireland. I was like, this is me. So yeah, me and my little company, Smart Fox, I had 4 interviews. and they actually didn't really feel like interviews, and got the job, and I'm still here.
I think what's fascinating about that is you touched on it a couple times. I think this is my takeaways, was companies who are posting positions and they didn't put the critical skill that was going to rule people in or out as an actual requirement. So if this was an experience that you did not have, why were you at the interview? Like, why did the recruiter call you? Right? Like, that is there, that means that company's being inefficient. And that means that they are spending money and time and effort on things that are getting them low yield. It's an interesting position to be in as a manager or as a hirer, or as an interviewer, to realize, wait a minute, like, we have a critical skill, and I have like at least one person who's at the like in-person interviewing stage or at the screening call stage where, supposedly we have like this, talent system that's screening people out, but that hasn't happened yet, so what are we paying for? And then the other realization is that the future of outsourcing is to take, like low cost of living jobs in Cork and outsource them to Manhattan, because that makes no sense at all, but somehow that's what we should all be doing.
That's what happened. And then ironically, with that company, about 8-9 months later, then they started opening up the same jobs back in Cork and growing like a big marketing department then back in Cork.
Oh, you're saying that outsourcing to New York City from Cork did not end up making financial sense?
I know, John. It's so strange, isn't
Crazy
it?
talk.
Like now that we say it out loud, it's so strange. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated that you had this like positive experience, and I'm assuming that if you had that same negative experience, it might have been a barrier to landing you doing the job and making the positive impact. So the employer had to be doing something right, by writing a job description that correctly screened you, like your personal screen, to qualify, yourself, qualifying yourself in for applying for the job even, right? So that was like an interesting lesson there for employers out there. Like, oh, hey, you need to write good job descriptions and have the actual things that are important to the job in the description, and then you'll find the people who are good for that job. But then, to have that positive interviewing experience, it was probably also pretty important to that as well, because if you had gotten like a really strongly negative feeling, you had other options. Like you could have kept running your own business.
Yeah, I know you're right, and I think things had changed this time around because I had my own business, and if anybody's wondering, the reason I was kind of deciding to come back into the workplace is very simple. It's just a mortgage, I gotten feedback from banks basically that they needed to see consistent income like every month, and they needed to see this and that. And with my own business, the only way I was going to kind of hit those figures was if I went global, if I scaled and went international and had to hire a team of people. I was just not going to do that. So actually the thing with the VMware role was that it was on contract initially. So that was also quite attractive for me. I was like, I can just, if I'm successful, I could kind of put my toe in the water and see, like, can I be an employee again? What's it like? And as I said earlier, it's a win-win, for everybody, that like I can put my toe in the water if I get the job. It's a contract role, and it suits both of us. And I suppose that the role in VMware is a brand new job as well. Is a new job. Actually, one of my interviews, they said that they were kind of looking for a startup mindset as well. I was like, that's me, an entrepreneurial type spirit. And not to be bigging up VMware, but the job spec was written in that new Go hiring format, which myself and Nick had spoken about earlier. It's a very unique type of job description, and it focuses on what the person is expected to do rather than what they're required to have. And so the phrase is performance over pedigree. So I am living proof of that.
You didn't quit SmartFox, right? That's still something that you do on the side, and it helps you really sharpen skills and make you a better employee during the day, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's scaled back massively to, I wouldn't even say it's a side hustle. It's probably like a mini side hustle now. I do the odd webinar in the evenings, like after 6 o'clock. I'm still a speaker, a conference speaker in that right. I have some lovely partnerships with some student groups, particularly 2 women in STEM groups and 2 universities here in Cork that I'm very fond of them. The cliche, what is the why? So I love that. I love kind of demystifying LinkedIn for students and just teaching them the right way to kind of go about it from the very start. And especially with these women in STEM groups, I'm connected with a lot of them. And after they graduate, some of them go into roles in nice companies here in Cork. And I see them just grow and change their job titles, and it's wonderful. Like, it is lovely. We're in very safe hands for the future. So I do that, and I have my own online school as well. I don't promote that as much as I should, but it's nice, and sometimes I'll give away like a huge discount code, just to kind of enroll people in there. Yeah, some people like to avail of like training, so whether they're job seeker or sales, they kind of like the self-paced training element as well. So I think it's very much like a security blanket, maybe because of being made redundant, and how much that affected me, like financially, emotionally, spiritually, over the years. So I think it's very much a security blanket, but it's also nice to have, and it's just something I'm just passionate about as well.
That's really terrific. I think that makes absolute sense, and maybe we'll make sure to have can you tell us the name of the school for the domain, and for people who maybe are interested in checking that out?
Absolutely. So the website is smartfox.ie, so smartfox.ie. And then if you want to go, like, there is a link to the school, but if you want to go straight to the school, it's smartfoxtraining.com.
Terrific. And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
That's super exciting, because I think you mentioned the Great Resignation. I'm trying to do a one-person rebrand to the instead of calling it the Great Resignation, calling it the Great Upgrade.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think that people are not actually quitting their jobs and doing nothing. I think what they're finding out is that there's better positions out there, and more flexible work and remote work has opened up the market for them to do other things. So that's what they're doing. And, people, some jobs are figuring out, we had people working for us because they were desperate. And now that they're not desperate for anything, because, their other positions are now available to them, it's being spun, I think, by people as like, people just aren't willing to work, or they're lazy, and, aren't willing to, people won't risk their lives, to do my job for minimum wage. And I don't understand why.
And they won't schedule every second of their day because they want to eat lunch. I can't believe that.
I've seen it also referred to as like the Great Revolution, which is a good one as well. Yeah, it's certainly, I think for some jobs, those of us who are lucky to have remote work, that has certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons, definitely. And I actually put a poll up on my LinkedIn. The question was, is the Great Resignation just based in the US, or do you think it applies to Ireland as well? Because out of my, let's say, friendship group, my connections, colleagues, I hadn't seen anybody kind of leave their multinational roles and move to like another role. This was a couple of months ago. Perhaps I'm just connected with too many recruiters and talent acquisition people, but it came back like 70% said yes, it does apply to Ireland. It's not just a US phenomenon. But then we were chatting with one of my colleagues in India, and we were looking at a piece of email marketing to candidates, to people who've applied for jobs in our database. And I was suggesting we put something like, "Oh, join the Great Resignation, join VMware," in the headline. And our India colleague was like, "What is the Great Resignation?" She wasn't aware of that term. So in spite of what my LinkedIn poll says, I think perhaps it might be more of a US phenomenon than controversial, maybe. I think it might be more US related. But I don't have any data from the UK or from London, so maybe I shouldn't say that either.
So interesting. I feel like maybe with the right Google foo, like we could figure out whether that is the localities of that search phrase or where it's appearing in media.
Mm-hmm.
With what Louise knows about SEO and Google Analytics, we could absolutely find that information.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds like a homework assignment for John White.
Yes, like I will definitely take that on. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm never held accountable for these tasks, so I'm happy to commit to that.
You could write a blog on it, John, to be fair.
I absolutely could.
With your
that is a great idea.
I'm
going to commit here and now to having that out by the time this is published.
Amazing.
So you can check out my blog on it at vjourneyman.com. The locality and appearance of media of the phrase Great Resignation throughout the English-speaking world over time.
This is the precursor to his 3-volume book series as well.
If I'm really good, then I'll have a live dashboard that people can look at as well. But I won't commit to that because who knows if I'll figure out the technology for that. But that would be cool if I could do that. But meh. Maybe I could do an animation, like where it appears over time, like the appearance in per like region over time, so you can like click on like the English speakers in Ireland, the UK, and maybe Norway and the entire Scandinavian region, because there's quite a bit of English speaking there. Maybe just Western Europe. Who knows?
New Zealand,
we'll see
Australia.
What I do. Yeah, ANZ. Absolutely.
Yeah, ANZ, as they say down there.
You're going to have to let your editor know if we're keeping all that or not.
No, I'm 100% committing to having that done. Again, no accountability, so who knows if I've actually done it. You in the future who've listened this far into the episode can tweet at me and let me know if I have or have not done that. That's my accountability.
And if you can rightly predict it, then I'll send you some stickers.
Awesome. Louise, I really, maybe you mentioned like the women in STEM and the like work you've been doing at local universities. If it's not too much trouble, before we close out, could you maybe talk a little bit about that? And then we can let you go. I feel like we've taken up so much of your time.
No, you're fine. I'm enjoying the chat. Yeah, so it started a couple of years ago and I got an inquiry through my website into my inbox, and it was from Women in STEM Society in university. We've two here. We have UCC, University College Cork, and MTU, Munster Technological University. So I got an inquiry from one of those universities, and basically they did a Google search. We're looking for LinkedIn training, and like this is all generated by themselves. It's not like a lecturer said it to them or anything. Like the president of the society said, we'd love to get LinkedIn training. We found you online. They got sponsorship from a local pharmaceutical company that they've good ties with, so they were able to pay me. And I said I would love to do that. So it was just my usual 15-minute kind of lecture on the do's and don'ts of LinkedIn for job seekers. It's kind of like a boot camp, basically. And I delivered it in one of their lecture halls here in Cork. And what was amazing was that after my talk, they had invited the Photography Society in to take professional headshots of them. And isn't that amazing?
That's
So,
awesome.
isn't it? Absolutely. So
Very
straight,
forward looking.
yes. So straight away, I was like, these ladies know exactly what they're doing. They're setting themselves up for success. Like when I was in university, I was just either hungover or in the library, basically. I wasn't as proactive as those ladies. So it was wonderful, and they were absolutely lovely. And I've connected with a lot of them. That's about 4 years ago now. As I mentioned earlier, I've seen them like progress and kept up to date with their progress on LinkedIn. And I'm just reminded, it was a couple of months after that, I was out for lunch one Saturday in Cork and went into this restaurant, and there was a big long table in the middle of the restaurant, about 20, 25, all women, like young women, and a few other women, older women down at the end of the table. And I kind of looked at them and they looked at me, and I recognized a few of them, and I was like, are you women in STEM? And a few of them were like, yes. And we had a lovely chat, and basically they had a weekend leadership workshop in conjunction with one of the pharmaceutical companies. So that basically started it, and I got such good feedback, and they loved that session so much that I do it now once a year with them every year. So the last 2 years were obviously online. And then with the other university, just very quickly, their lecturers had organised like a 1 day prepare yourself for interview, and so they had loads of different sessions. It was incredible, and they had mock interviews as well, but I was invited in to give them a talk on the same thing on LinkedIn for job seekers. It's very funny because I show them like headlines, on LinkedIn you have your headline basically, and I knew we had some software engineers in the group, and I wanted to show them like really cool examples of really creative headlines. So I typed in like software engineer and into LinkedIn and did people, and I was like on page 4 basically, and it was all like software engineer. There was no cool headlines whatsoever. And so then I said, oh, maybe I'll change the location to like Silicon Valley. And I was like, they'll have cool headlines over there for sure. No, software engineer. And eventually, I don't know where I went, but I found like 2 kind of cool headlines. I don't even remember what they were. One was like software engineer specializing in AI for blah, blah, blah. And I was like, finally, somebody who's telling me a little bit more, doing their elevator pitch in their headline. So I thought that would be really interesting. So I put that into the presentation, and I told them, and I had it on slides going, I did so many searches, and I was like, I couldn't find anybody apart from like these 2 people. And I was like, I'm telling you, I said, this is ripe for development. I was like, even if you put in like 5 other words, in addition to software engineer in your headline, you're really going to catch the eye of recruiters, of talent acquisition people. You're just going to tell us a little bit more about yourself. We had a bit of a chat about that, and some of them were like, but I don't like words, and why can't we just be like software engineers, and why, like, I don't know how to write in that. So we ended up doing an impromptu little workshop on the whiteboard around that. But I just thought it was quite funny, and I actually use those slides now in a lot of my training to kind of say, think outside the box here. So that was that. That's how that started, and that's how that's continuing. And they're fab, and they're lovely, and hopefully I'll do it every year for as long as I can.
I don't think you realize it, Louise, but every time you share something, you end up ending on a lesson for all of us, and I really enjoy that. So the one for us here is master your headline. Make sure that you write something that accurately describes what you do, and think differently about it compared to maybe what other people write who do the same thing as you. Never know what might happen.
It's your elevator pitch. It's not even like a minute. It's probably like a 20-second elevator pitch. But on a very practical level, it influences hearts and minds. It influences the other people at the other side of the screen. But also on LinkedIn, it has a massive impact on search engine optimization. Where you're going to appear. Are you going to appear on page 1 of the search results for that term? And if you're a job seeker, that's actually the big thing that you can do, because it is so influential on the search bot on LinkedIn, but also it influences Google search as well.
That's fascinating. And right when you said headline, like my heart sank, because I've definitely seen some headlines where it's, it's like a sentence and it's like helping people understand the power of the, and I'm out. Like I don't actually care what comes after that. But really what you're talking about is adding just like even 5 extra words at the end of the title, like, having the industry standard title, and then maybe the word specializing in, and then, something, 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 something. Like that will really help somebody who is trying to micro-target you and they just don't know it yet and find you, right? And that just makes so much sense.
Well,
so much sense.
There is a big difference between your job title, which sits further down under the experience, and your headline. So where your picture is, and your headline is the words underneath that. So think of it like a newspaper headline, basically. And you don't even, like, there is a character count on it. So what I do is, instead of using AND, I use the ampersand symbol, the little squiggly symbol. And then, I don't know what the official name is, but like the little line that you can use. It's on my Mac keyboard.
Pipe symbol.
That's it. I knew it had a name. So on my Mac, it's on the right hand side, and it's beside the return key. It's that straight line. So that's what I do in my headline. I use that to kind of divide my keywords, basically. So your headline and your job title are 2 of the most powerful search engine elements on your profile. And if you're a job seeker, I actually spend the most amount of time when I'm working one-to-one with job seekers on those 2 elements as well. Not just from an SEO point of view, but influencing hearts and minds, telling your story, telling your narrative, and catching the eye of recruiters and talent acquisition specialists.
So I'm looking at, just maybe we could use me as an example. I'm looking at my headline. My headline is literally my title. I work for Google. Yeah, and I've used my job title as my headline. My job title is customer engineer, and the headline says customer engineer at Google. But like I'm thinking about this. First of all, I don't work I work specifically in Google Cloud, right? So, and then also customer engineer is not the industry standard title for what it is that I do. So maybe I could do something like customer engineer, pipe, pre-sales, technical engineer at Google Cloud.
Yeah. Pipe. Podcast. And the name
co-host of the Nerd Journey podcast.
If you choose to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Teller of stories.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then you beef up your job title as well. So some people would be like, oh, it only says this on my contract. Whereas with me, to tell you another little story, when I set up my own company, Smart Fox, and I was a director, so I put that in my job title, just the word director, and I was just like, job done, amazing. And then I started on LinkedIn, putting in like LinkedIn trainer, LinkedIn training specialist, and I wasn't coming up on page 1, page 2, page 3. I was down on like page 4. And then I did my usual. I was like, what do the people on page 1 have that I don't have? And again, so simple. They had the word LinkedIn trainer everywhere. They had it in their headlines. They had these big long job titles like LinkedIn trainer, specializing in personal branding, LinkedIn expert. They must have said the word LinkedIn like 3 times. You read through the about section, LinkedIn. In the skills section, like LinkedIn. So again, I'm just, what was I thinking? Director. And I use this example in my training as well, show how important it is. So again, like what I had to do with my website that time, totally revamped my own LinkedIn profile. And then one time somebody did a search for me and I was coming up second, like putting a LinkedIn trainer, and I was second in their search results. So, and that's, I think, what I love about search engine optimization. It is so easy to manipulate. It's so easy to kind of influence when you have your little formula, because it's words, and I love words, so it's kind of perfect for me.
It's definitely easier when everybody else isn't doing it, right?
Yeah.
So like you're literally putting yourself in the top 1% because 99% of the people haven't even thought to make the effort.
Yep.
And so standing out is easy to get into the top like 100 results. And then you're probably competing more and more with, needing, better and more content, high quality content, the higher up you want to go. So if you want to place in that top 5, you probably can't just stuff LinkedIn in every single statement. You probably need to like link to some blog posts that you've written from LinkedIn, out to your blog or something like that. Like, and then have those place well.
Or you may have, the Huffington Post kind of mentioned your article in one of and you have an inbound link, coming from like bigger sites. But I will say that it's one thing ranking highly for like LinkedIn Trainer Ireland, but then when you get into the space of, let's say, like global airlines or like massive industries and like top search terms where you have search engine optimization experts and specialists who, let's say, would be minutely technical, it moves beyond the beauty of words. Then at that stage, I think then, like, I've seen somebody tweet like 4 years they've been trying to get to number 1, and then on this one day their company website eventually overtook second place and got to number 1. So I think for smaller businesses, yes, it's great, and it can be quite easy to do. It just takes consistency. But for when you're getting into the realm of professional full-time teams of SEO experts, I'd say if you could get some of them on your podcast, I think it would be fascinating.
Well, Louise, I have to say that I feel like, if we're trying to go from 20 to number 1 in podcasts, going up against, Joe Rogan or whoever is up there, maybe we'll do that. But I really feel like, for the audience that we're trying to reach, people who are trying to revolutionize or upskill their career, to make progress, some of the things that you've talked about, writing, quality content, and then understanding what it is that people are looking for when they're looking for you, understanding the actual rule-in skill that is being asked for in a job domain, and then going out and getting training for that, and then seeing the results. Like, the things and lessons that you've talked about today are just gold. It was just
100%.
Nugget of gold, nugget of gold, nugget of gold, pipe, nugget of gold, nugget of gold, nugget of gold.
Oh, thanks, John.
I'm messaging John saying that was gold. That was gold.
Oh, you're so good. So guys, just actually before I go, there's a couple of really quick tips that I would like to give any job seekers or job changers out there. So I suppose what I learned was the power of your network. And like in Ireland and Cork, everybody knows everybody. And I've learned that certain jobs, certain roles will kind of come about, or certain, I suppose, recommendations or referrals will come about through like your network. So when I was made redundant, I actually didn't know any other marketers in Cork, because I had been so focused like internally within the previous company. And it was actually a big realization that I was like, I don't know a marketing director. I don't know a decision maker in marketing. There's nobody who can kind of recommend me. So I joined a women in networking business group. It was my first time ever networking. I was very nervous, but they were lovely. And I just kept going. They had an event every Wednesday evening. It was a lovely event. I kept going. And I actually met my graphic designer, Paula, through that, who designed the Fox and my branding. And we bartered, because I had no money. So I gave her an hour of my time for digital marketing every week, and she gave me an hour of her time. And actually, when I was freelancing, when I was working with clients, they loved my branding. And so I ended up getting Paula a lot of work. Like, I was her digital marketer, she was my graphic designer. We kind of tag teamed on a lot of projects together. So I think that's a huge thing. And I know people have asked me, well, in these online times, you know, how do I do that? So attend like LinkedIn live events, but maybe ask a question, or like connect with the speaker or the organizer afterwards on LinkedIn and say, I attended the event, I thought it was great, I'd love to connect. You know, if you are called for interview, you know, you can look up the interviewer if you get their name on LinkedIn. So I think that's really, really important. And also, I don't know, you know, where the listeners are based, but here in Cork, if you're an engineer, there's like the Engineers Society. If you're a marketer, there's a Marketing Institute of Ireland Society. Then if you're in IT, like there's loads, there's IT at Cork, and there's a few others. So wherever your tribe hang out, wherever your community is, don't be shy and join that. And if you end up going to a physical event, don't stand in the corner, you know, with your cup of tea or coffee. You know, stand at the coffee station, make eye contact. People are there to talk, people are there to engage. And also business cards. So I just got some business cards like online basically that said Louise Bunyan, digital marketing specialist, with my email address, my phone number. Cheap as chips. But it's just really nice to have something like at a physical event, you know, get business cards, hand out business cards and connect them on LinkedIn. So I think that's one of the big things. If I could go back in time, if I could tell myself that would be one of the big things. Secondly, LinkedIn will get you found in searches. Recruiters will reach out to you on LinkedIn. So think of that like the top of the funnel almost. So like that's that part. But then what comes next in the pipeline is your CV. So that's like another part of the process. And then thirdly is the interview. And in hindsight, my interview skills weren't great. As you can see, I talk a lot and I kind of go off on tangents. So when you're in an interview situation for a job, that actually doesn't go down very well. So when I thought about stepping away from my business and going back, interviewing, actually I joke, but like I had interview PTSD. So I had to work kind of quite hard on that. But most importantly, I reached out to my network and I worked with a really good interviewer coach. So I had 2 sessions with her and that was invaluable. And then when it came time to interviewing, like I'd say a year and a half ago maybe, I interviewed with 3 companies. The first company I interviewed with, I didn't get the job, but I got feedback afterwards and they were lovely. And I got down to the final 2 out of 100 applicants. And the person who got the job had actually worked in the company previously and could just hit the ground running. So there was like nothing I could do about it physically. Like there was nothing I could do about that job. So that was actually lovely feedback to get and that gave me a lot of confidence. The second company I interviewed with, again, I think they got like 150 applicants. I got down to the last 2 and 2 tough interviews, I have to say. I didn't want the job. I knew after the first interview, but I didn't want to do the second interview. So that meant I had to do it because it was going to be difficult, which meant I did it. But at that stage, I didn't care. And I was so cheeky and I was so bold. You know, I was brazen like in that interview and they actually really liked it. They offered me the job. I was 2 interviews in with VMware at that stage and I knew VMware was the one for me. I just knew it. And I declined. I told the other company, let me have the weekend to think about it. I declined. And it was a bit of a gamble, bit of a risk. But because I had my own company, I was like, you know, I can fall back on that if I don't get the VMware role. But actually for my 3rd and for my 4th interview for VMware, I just told them openly, like, I want this job. Like, this job spec is me and there's so much I can do. And I think lastly, because I'd worked for myself, because I had learned to hustle, because I'd learned to sell, And because I was coming up with ideas and I was showing them what I would love to do, what I could do if I got into the role. And that was probably one of the first times I'd ever kind of gone into an interview and said, I want this and this is what I can do for you. So I suppose my confidence had just come on leaps and bounds. And 4 interviews from a woman, I couldn't even get arrested like after I got made redundant. So yeah, like it just, everything just kind of came together and the stars aligned. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is it's tough. It's really tough when you're going for interviews. And sometimes if you're finding it quite grueling, you know, if you're getting ground down, if you can, go to an interview coach and work your network, optimize your profile. There are so many small things that you can do that will add up to a greater kind of shift in your luck, basically. And I just wish you all the best of luck. And if you need to go freelancing to build up that experience, or if you need to get kind of a lower paid job just to get off that grind of interviewing, like that's absolutely fine too. But like John and Nick are doing, you know, they have their podcast. I have my blog. So is there something that you can do that is just going to show an employer, like, I'm really just passionate about the subject, and that will make you stand out in and of itself. And by the way, when you're doing a blog, like you can just create a little portfolio site like I did. You can write 4 blogs and put them up there. Nobody's going to be saying you must be writing a blog a week, but it's just showing something that gives you a little bit of gold dust. It gives you a little bit of sparkle. And it just kind of makes you stand out. And look, if you need to play the game, if you need to create a portfolio website and stick up 4 blogs just to be able to say in an interview, I'm so passionate about this, I have my own blog, do that. You know, just give yourself every chance. So those are my top tips, let's say, for getting ahead in job seeking.
Wow, thank you so much, Louise. We really appreciate you taking the time here.
Yeah, just like Nick said earlier, just nuggets of gold after nuggets of gold. And we appreciate your time and your passion. Every lesson that we've learned, we'll definitely have you back. I'm sure that we'll come up with all kinds of hypotheses and topics that maybe we could collaborate on for another interview.
That would be wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's been great fun hanging out with you both.
If you went through a ton of interviews like Louise did, would you think to keep a spreadsheet tracking your interview feedback as a way to analyze the data and make a decision? I'm just not sure that everybody would. I think that's fantastic that she did that. Again, documenting what's happening and making data-driven decisions that she could control. She can control what she did, and I just love that. She also mentioned that she got some experience. She got experience through freelancing, and she beefed up her content. She optimized it. That search engine optimization, getting the words right, making sure the content was very much quality content is a theme of this episode and the last one. And that's something we can all take away. If we're going to make online content, we should make sure it's of a good quality, even if it's not a lot. Let's make sure that whatever we showcase is good and represents our brand well to an employer. I kind of wondered if maybe she had a fear about going back inside and working for an employer again after owning her own business. I wondered if maybe a potential employer would ask her, you know, why would you come work for me if you're working for yourself? But she shares with us that, number one, there was a really good financial reason to do it, and it was looked upon as a good thing. Because in the business unit she was joining, they actually wanted somebody with a startup mindset. This reminds me of the discussion that Scott Lowe and I had in episode 153. He talked about why he liked the startup life. So there's startup as a company that you can go and work for. like Kong, where Scott Lowe works as of the publishing of this episode. And then there are large organizations that have groups that operate kind of like startups within that big organization. So a couple different ways to get that experience that you may not know about. I like the fact that Louise continues to do Smart Fox things on the side. She's dialed it back a bit, but she hasn't stopped the side gig, the side hustle, and flexing those muscles as well, keeping the creative juices flowing. I have to say her work with women in STEM and the LinkedIn training she did was fantastic. I liked the examples that she shared, those practical tips for all of us, making sure we get our headline right and our job description right on our own LinkedIn page so that we can be more attractive to potential employers, whether we're looking for work or not. It's all about search engine optimization. I think we've heard a number of guests mention the focus on professional networking. That was something Louise learned perhaps a little bit later than she wanted to. So make sure you're building up your professional network, whether you're doing that in person, remotely. And don't forget that you can trade services with people to get experience that you can list on your resume. That's a great, great lesson. Last thing I'll say is remember Louise's advice to do something, whatever that is, blog, podcast, something else you do, create, show evidence of. Do something to show an employer you're passionate about a subject. And that, in and of itself, is going to help you stand out in the interview process. I hope you enjoyed this series of interviews as much as I did. And definitely send us feedback if you have it. Just a reminder, we'd like people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter @NerdJourney. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm Nick Cordy @NetworkNerd_, flying solo for now, for my buddy John White @VJourneyman, signing off.